Kansas City Jazz is still a big point of pride here, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's easy to make a living at it.
Most all the players who keep the sound alive have to be tireless and resourceful.
One such example would be the man who leads the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra, Clint Ashlock.
As you'll see, that also means playing his trumpet with various bands and getting up earlier than most musicians might prefer so he can teach it too.
Trumpet heroes? Man, how long do we have? I mean, Freddie Hubbard and Woody Shaw and Clark Terry, and Lee Morgan, Chet Baker and Wynton Marsalis and Nicholas Payton and, you know, Stan Kessler. I mean, like the list, you know, is very deep. The most influential musician in my life has got to be Stevie Wonder. Songs in the Key of Life, I mean, that thing is like, that's always in my head. I kind of thought when I was, 22 or something that you graduated from music school and all of a sudden you were going to be this, musician, and that's all you did. And then in my mid-20s, just finding different things that would just fall in my lap. It's probably much better to be that way than to just pigeonhole yourself into being, I'm only going to play hard bop trumpet at a nightclub. I would not be doing anything, probably. Probably not even playing hard bop trumpet at a nightclub.
Here we go. That's why this cold December morning finds Clint getting the Johnson County Community College Jazz Ensemble ready for their end of the semester concert. Fine-tuning a spirited composition by his all-time favorite jazz man, John Coltrane.
And I don't think it's being snobbish, but I'm not going to give them, something that's just written arbitrarily for a college ensemble. I want to make sure to introduce them to something that has a lineage, that has a depth. And that's something that I think music education should be mindful of, is educating their students, not just to pressure them into knowing what an A-flat melodic minor scale is, but to make sure they're listening to great music.
This teacher does, on occasion, pull from an array of horns to make a musical point, something he learned from Bobby Watson at UMKC.
Almost every rehearsal, he came in with a saxophone. And you can't argue with the truth. Bobby would come in and he would just play it, and we'd be like, oh, that's what it sounds like. It's a much more expedient way to get to the information that he's trying to disseminate. But you do have to find a balance. You can't just play all the time.
School of another sort takes place here every Wednesday night. After 9 years upstairs at Harlings, Clint moved his new Jazz Order Big Band, first to the Broadway Jazz Club, then when it closed, to the Green Lady.
It's kind of become this commune for the younger jazz musicians on the scene to have an outlet to play, to read music, to read charts. It helps your musicianship a ton, just to go in and sight read songs, every week. The new Jazz Order Band is definitely an excellent outlet for blowing off of the steam and just kicking back and enjoying the music.
Ashlock finds joy in jazz no matter how it's packaged. He's fronted his own quintet and quartet and recently started backing vocalist Jessica Page. Then there's Project H, swimming in an original stew of 70s funk and fusion.
It's a great band. All of us are messed up somehow, so we get along that way. They're great songs. Ryan Heinlein writes brilliant, brilliant compositions. The joy that I get out of the music is trying to do something that I haven't ever done before. And sometimes it's just a giant failure, but sometimes you get that, you hit that 340-yard drive right down the middle, and it's like, oh, all right, that makes up for the ones that went into the woods. And Project H is a great outlet for that.
But the job with the highest visibility is this one, which puts him on stage 4 times a year at Helzberg Hall. Directing the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra isn't technically a full-time job, but in reality, it's pretty darn close. Clint took the reins 3 years ago after the passing of his friend and mentor, Carrie Strayer.
The thing that makes that job so desirable for me, just because it's so many directions that we can go with it, and I really want it to develop over the next 30 years, you know, not just the next 2. You know, we've got some things coming up that I don't think that band maybe would have done a few years ago. And that's exciting, this British Invasion concert. You know, that's going to be kind of wickedly different. And then the very next concert is going to be traditional New Orleans and Chicago-style Dixieland music, but with a Kansas City big band twist.
Last fall also marked another milestone for the KCJO, a new recording. Overcoming the logistical challenges of getting 17 members and musical guests in Decipher sound in time for a holiday release.
I did like a doodle poll of like every day in the month, and I had a matrix thing with all the dates. And then you've got to focus on the music, you know, making sure that everything is written and copied off and legible and right. Everybody put in a lot of work on that record, and I think we're all proud of it. 1, 2, 3, 1. People that complain about being busy, I think they don't really like what they're doing. About once or twice a year, I'll realize how much time that I put into things, and whoa, that's a lot, and then I forget about it and just continue working. That people decide to come out and listen to you play or dance to you or anything to your music, it makes me feel really good as a musician, and it makes me really want to allow them to leave feeling way better about themselves than when they came.